Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Startup Junkies Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Caleb Talley. I am the Director of Marketing at Startup Junkie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jeff Amerine, founder and managing director of Startup Junkie. I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Suzanne Tulien. She's a brand clarity expert, author, and we're so glad to have her here. Thank you for joining us, Suzanne.
I totally appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff, and I love people who love to talk about this stuff.
Absolutely, we're big fans. And so tell us about. I'm most interested in learning about brand DNA methodology. So tell us about that.
So 17 years ago, I left my own company that I started after I left corporate America. So this is really my third kind of real job. And I was in marketing, advertising, design, graphic design. And I decided I had this BFO, which is the blinding flash of the obvious for me, with clients I was working on doing some logo designs for, and realizing that when I would give them the design schematics for their new look and feel, that they were a little apprehensive in that next level of visual that I was helping them create to represent their brand. And the reason why they were so apprehensive is because it brought them into that next level, and they were a little afraid because they felt that maybe they weren't quite ready for that let's say contemporary visual to step it up for them from the outside, right, looking in, from their markets looking in. And they weren't really quite ready to deliver on that visual promise. And it was just a visual promise, right? It was their next look and feel. So I was realizing all of a sudden that, what I'm doing for you is a disservice. Designing a look and feel on a logo that was just really putting lipstick on the pig, so to speak, and not helping you really truly clarify and understand who you are as a brand so you can up-level it from the inside out and really deliver on your promise. So that's what had me back off from doing design work anymore and really help the organization clarify their brand's DNA. They should have been telling me who they were as a designer, but instead I found myself a lot telling them who they should be because they weren't clear enough. And so the DNA methodology came out of really create a desire to create a step-by-step process to help them identify, define, and align to who they're saying they are, who they're promising to be and deliver, and that they had never done that before. So it kind of launched a whole new business for me in terms of I'm not putting lipstick on the pig anymore, the paint on the outside, right, the marketing side of it, but I'm helping you really identify and define what that's supposed to represent, and then truly build systems and processes and operations and a culture that will help you deliver on it. That's how it all started.
Well, that was really clear. And speaking of brand promise, we tend to have a brand promise on the Startup Junkies podcast that may or may not include dogs barking in the background. So the reason why I had to go off the screen there for a second was I had the windows open because it's a nice day and the dogs were barking. So forgive me for that. As you think, one of the things we talk about in the startup world ties to this idea of authentic branding, brand promise. Sometimes if you look at a lean canvas, a business canvas, they'll have unique value proposition in there. That is the one box, maybe more than any other on a lean canvas, that ties to the company's culture and its purpose, its core values. Talk about when you go in and help companies build that authentic brand, how you tie it in a way to the culture. It can't be something that is sort of a veneer or a facade. It's got to be genuine and reflective of the culture. How do you do that to make sure that it all glues together?
That's a great question. And, I'll back up and just say that companies are doing it the other way, but yep. they're not thriving by design. They're thriving by default, right? So it can be done and they're barely getting by, or they're struggling, right? But you can have it a different way. And that's the way of really going inward, going deep, and fleshing out what those attributes are that you are espousing to deliver on. And so the DNA process is really about fleshing out those core values, not only just the values themselves, but what are the definitions of those values, so that everyone has a collective denotative and connotative understanding of that, what that value is. Say, for example, we value profitability, but what does that mean? Like, let's define it, right? If we can put some sentences to it and some construct to it, that's the secret sauce that so many don't do that sort of a deep dive. And imagine having 4 or 5 core values, then you decipher what your personal brand or your business brand style attributes are. And that's really for the personal brand, which is the book I just launched. The personal brand is the brand of the organization, right? So my personality has to be infused into everything that I do. And I'm really selling me, not necessarily my products or services, but how I go about delivering what I deliver. And when I've defined my, let's say one of my style attributes is efficiency. I lean into efficiency like crazy. I find the way to make it simple and efficient. And I'm constantly looking for that. My clients notice that I find those things. And so when I can promise efficiency, like, well, I'm going to get you from point A to point B in 3 months. We're going to do this. We're going to make it happen. And I do it through efficiency. So I know that I have to now, if I'm establishing that as a brand value attribute or a style attribute, that I have to deliver on that. So I have to consciously, strategically, and deliberately align myself to create the standards of performance that you do in businesses, or my standards of living for a personal brand that I can actually step into, and it's real for me. Then I'm constantly looking for that more efficient way of doing what I'm doing, because I lean into it and I love it. So when you're asking about the process, how do you do that? You have to get down to the nuts and bolts in that foundational level, and you do it with a team. If you're talking about businesses, we're doing it, I do it collectively with a set number of people within the organization. Or with personal brands, it's all you. You get to decide everything, and then we're gonna document it, and we're gonna start aligning is the third thing. Identify, define, and align. So align is what you have to do in order to deliver on your promise. And how do we make these core values and this style attribute tangible so that it shows up in my actions and behaviors? And that's what I love showing my clients how to do, because then they get to create a whole new experience that is aligned with who they are. And it's easy to deliver because it's authentic. It's so powerful. I'm no longer chasing the client anymore. I'm having a pull reaction. I'm sucking them in, right? Because I'm who I am. I'm consistent at doing it.
Are there examples, I guess, companies or individuals you would point to as examples that our listeners might recognize that do that really well?
Oh, I think there's a lot of like solopreneur celebs, or gosh, there's so many businesses that are just now getting it, especially with the advent of social media. They're finding that they have to really land on a platform and identify and define what that platform is for them, stay in their lane and become that. Or they get called upon, they get called out. And it's easy because we're human, right? Sometimes we make a mistake and we get out of our lane, but they'll get called on it. So it's now the audience becoming kind of the brand ambassadors and keeping them in alignment. But it just takes that consciousness. And I would say Mary Foriello is one of them, of course, Tony Robbins. They have picked a platform and they're staying in it. But it's so authentic for them. It's so easy for them to do that. And they're not afraid to be that authentic person. And they're not trying to be anybody else. They're really being themselves.
As you get into maybe the initial stages of an engagement or your diligence on a potential engagement, do you ever have to walk away because it's evident that somebody's motives are not aligned? Maybe they want to build this marketing veneer so that they'll be perceived some way that is drastically different than how they really are or how the company really is.
Jeff, that's a great question. I would say that I used to do that a lot and have to walk away because I wasn't qualifying my clients well enough, because the end game to them in that situation was always that they were going to be this marketing guru and they were just going to, just promise the world and be out there and get all this, the profit was their bottom line motivation, basically, versus really serving. So now I do quite a detailed intake, and I make sure they understand what I'm all about and what I'm getting them into, because most don't, because they don't understand branding versus marketing and the two differences. And when I explain it to them what they're getting themselves into, they can say, oh, but I was just hoping for a logo, or that's all I needed, right? Yeah. Then we're not the right fit, right?
Gotcha.
Great question.
I think that happens a lot of times. People, they think of branding and that's what they think, okay, I've got a style guide, let's rock and roll. Would you say that's probably one of the most common misconceptions in an approach to a brand from young companies?
So Caleb, when you understand that marketing is, you market a brand. So they can't be the same thing, right? So if I'm out there marketing something I have yet to define and align to, then what am I marketing? So when you're missing that component of identifying and defining your brand, then you're literally, the only thing you can marketing is something that you're saying that chases the client or the prospect, because you have to find what you're really actually delivering yet in terms of your promise. So I always say, marketing might get your clients or prospects in the door, but it's your brand that keeps them coming back.
Do you work across all sectors? I mean, or do you try to focus on a few industry sectors where you maybe have some more detailed background, or what's your approach to finding clients?
Well, it depends. If I'm in the business arena, the business brand arena, and I'm working with middle market size companies, then we have found that we fall into mostly the service sector, because there's so much front-facing people to the client or the prospect, like sales industries. But we also fell into a lot of, and I say we because at the time when we were doing a lot of brand DNA work, which is the red book there, for middle market size companies, I had a business partner, Carol Chapman, who co-authored the book with me. We found ourselves hitting a lot of like engineering and technical firms for some reason. They were really thirsty for some cultural collaboration and connection within the company, because they're highly analytical, right? And there wasn't a lot of touchy-feely stuff. We were surprised too, but we started getting calls from these technological companies that needed to create some more touchy-feely or personality in their culture. So that was fairly interesting. And then for the personal brands, it's really more about the coaches who want to be known as the expert in their field, the real estate agents who are considered a commodity and a dime a dozen in their industry, who just really want to stand out based on their superpower personality. Like, what are they leaning into the most? What are they really good at? What is their worldview, and how can they attract the right client to fit that?
That's interesting.
So no real sector. Yeah.
You mentioned, having worked in the corporate world. It'd be interesting to hear a little bit about your journey, from the corporate world to your own kind of entrepreneurial journey there.
Yeah, when I left the corporate world, I was in a company that locally grew through acquisition, and they bought 13 companies in 2 years. And I was kind of just thrown into the mix of helping them inculcate all of these other companies into the one brand, which is like really when I began to understand, well, brand, what do you mean that one brand? So it's a psychographic, right, within this culture of this company. And you got 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 13 companies moving in. You got to look at culture. You got to look at systems and processes, the vernacular and the narrative that these companies are using, and how do I get my arms around all of that and start talking the same language, start putting together some philosophies and the same processes and operations, and getting HR to all be on the same page. And it was just chaos. It was a mess. So that's what got me fascinated. I have a communication major and a graphic design minor, but I've always been interested in organizational communication. So that's really got me fascinated about how do we infuse the value position of the company. First, let's articulate it. Let's get it really clear. And then how do we infuse it into HR, into operations, and all the sales, into all the silos of the business, and all get on the same page and work for the same effort. It was powerful.
Did you ever take on, or would you ever take on any big challenges like a regional or municipal branding? And the reason why I asked that, it was not without kind of somewhat hidden agenda, is we live in this place that's now referred to as Northwest Arkansas, which doesn't mean anything to anybody anywhere else other than here. And part of the reason why it's grown up that way is it's a very kind of linear corridor that has Fayetteville, Arkansas, Springdale, Rogers, Bentonville, where Walmart is, and then a little place called Siloam Springs. And all these little city states who used to compete in football games and everything in high school all had kind of their own identity. But as an MSA now, metropolitan service area of greater than 500,000, they're desperately trying to promote and market the area as a region, with different flavors and ideas. Some places have done that, like Research Triangle in North Carolina, Twin Cities. And I mean, there's places that have done it. We haven't quite figured it out yet. And so there you go. How would you attack something like that?
Well, I think it's the same thing. It's really the process. And until you can get clarity and I would pull from all of these areas, some key constituents from these areas, and put what I call a brand task team together and walk them through this brand DNA process. So they're all agreeing on what are we standing for? What do we believe in? Are we going to be the greenest region in America? Are we going to be, what are we going to tackle? What are we going to say we are, right? We just went through this in Colorado Springs with the Olympic Committee. I mean, it was a big deal. It's not working very well. They weren't my client, but it's not working very well. It fell through the cracks and we hardly hear about it anymore. And that's the problem, because they didn't align. They may have identified and maybe defined a little bit, but they didn't enlist, equip, and engage the community to take part of this, to hang their hat on it, to really, get empowered around it. And that was the missing piece. And that it's unsustainable when you don't do that part of it. And you cannot do that part of it until you have something clear that you can hang your hat on. So it would be a challenge. I don't know if I would want that challenge because it's very bureaucratic in the municipality, right? I don't generally like to put myself in that position because it's hard.
Sure.
And it's depleting of, brain cells.
Right. Exactly.
Well, if they were wanting and willing and inspired and excited to do it, I would do it. But if there's resistance, then I'm not playing in that sandbox.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's no fun when you're trying to drive any kind of change if there's an inordinate number of saboteurs or people that can't kind of rally around it. So I mean, that's a good insight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good question.
Probably a lot easier to work with a startup. And so if you were, going to give advice to a startup around bringing clarity to their brand, somebody that's really just kind of getting started, what advice might that be?
Buy the book. I mean, the process
is a good first step. Yeah.
I could walk you through it. The online courses there as well for people that learn through more multisensorial, the visual, video, the auditory. And then the workbook exercises, but the entire process it's Caleb, it's really about sitting down and mapping out. People say they have a marketing plan, but nobody has a brand plan. I mean, but you're out there marketing a brand. Where is this? Right? So sit down and figure out your core values, what you stand for, your brand style attributes, what makes you different. There is a fabulous activity in here about creating your differentiators. And I look for quantifiable things, how long you've been in the business, how much experience you've had, all of these little number things that a lot of people don't dig and find for themselves. But when you can say, 98% of my customers are highly satisfied, or you can say I've helped over 1,500 people get from point A to point B, and you have those quantifiers, then that is something you can stand on as a platform. And those are always changing, right? Because you're growing and expanding and you can add to those numbers. People don't think about that. Like, have a page of why choose me on your website, right? What are those things? And then again, with a personal brand, a lot of times my clients are afraid to boast about themselves, right? But I always talk to them about earning the right. And if they've earned the PhD, or they've earned the coaching certificate, or if they've earned, an award somewhere, they get to express what that is so that people begin to trust and relate to them. And they lay down the credential of earning the right. And then there's these other things in the differentiator section that are talents. Like, I am a fly fisher woman. I'm an outdoors gal, right? I hike, I ski, I fly fish, I do all these. So as soon as I start talking about me personally too, they start relating to you. I've gotten clients because I just mentioned in a workshop that I'm a fly fisher woman, right? And then 2 or 3 women come up to me afterwards and they'll say, we're gonna work together because you fly fish, so do I. I never see any women on the river. I know. So we start talking about all this stuff, it's the relationship sort of thing that starts happening when you are a little bit more vulnerable and share more about you.
So you think that, I guess, an entrepreneur should just initially embrace that personal branding? Like, I know some would resist, and some of them do it really well, I see. But I mean, they should embrace that on the front end, I guess, is what you would suggest.
Well, let me tell you this. I have good news and bad news. The good news is that everybody already has a brand. They already have a personal brand, because a personal brand is just a perception. And you begin formulating, giving off things that create perceptions from day one, right? Your parents perceive you as this kind of baby, right? You're a happy baby, you're a crying baby, you're whatever, temperamental or not, right? So you start creating these perceptions from day one. So we cannot not already have a brand. So the bad news is that we already have a brand, right? So the question is are we in control of it? Have we gotten more conscious, strategic, and deliberate about how we show up and how we want others to perceive us? And until we can get control of it, we cannot sustain it and we can't leverage it out there. So you might as well pay attention to what brand you want to deliver on. And it has to be authentic, right? Because you want to make it sustainable. But everybody else is already perceiving you as something.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. In getting ready to have the conversation today, I noticed you use the word conscious or consciousness throughout your website, everywhere in there. And that idea of self-awareness, emotional intelligence, being an active listener, I think that's a big part of it. You can be intentional or unintentional about how you're perceived or what your brand is, but unless you're listening really well and paying attention to how people react, that brand may manifest, or they're what everyone else thinks about you, which is a lot of times how you define a brand, may manifest in a way you never expected because you're not self-aware and maybe not being self-critical. I don't know. I seized on that one word you used because I had not seen that used in anything talking about brand before. And I think you're exactly right, whether it's self-awareness or being conscious. It just really resonated with me.
Awesome. So you tapped into that. So the more of those words that I use in my marketing that reflect what I lean into, and the people that tap into that, those are my clients. People that skim over it and just like, what is she talking about? Conscious, unconscious. They're not my clients, right? So I am free to talk about what it is that I do and the way that I do it, in a way that I would talk about it, not what I think my clients want to hear, because I don't talk that marketing way. And then that helps me attract those people that understand those words, that get it, that are, I don't know if I want to say mature enough, but who are aware enough to know that they have something, they have an expertise, they have a way of being, they have a philosophy that if they could just get on a mountain and shout it out to the world, and just the population that leans into that would come to them. It's those types of people that feel like they have something to say, that what they're doing is going to help or impact so many, that those are my clients, because they know personal development is inextricably related to success. So the more personally developed you are, the more success you will have in life, is my belief anyway.
Well, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you've been successful in your practice, you're an author. So the hard question is, what does winning look like for you? As you think about your own vision of where you want to take what you're doing today over the next 3 to 5 or more years, what is that journey? What do you want it to look like for it to be successful?
I always say that I play my way to success. So I am a trainer. I am a certified trainer. So I speak on live stages a lot. Lately, a lot of online because of COVID. Yep. But when I'm out there on stages, I play with my audiences. We have fun. I enlist, equip, and engage them to want to know more about who they are and how can they leverage it. So I see myself out there just, you know, touring the world, having more adventure, you know, maybe doing workshops on cruises, you know, overseas, and just every time I go or get invited to a place to speak, I'm playing as well, bringing my personality into what it is that I do. And I love impacting people, getting the feedback from them halfway through my course saying, oh my God, I just had this big thing, or guess what came out of the blue, right? Well, it didn't come out of the blue because you're aligning yourself now with who you really are, and you're allowing all of this to happen. It's just that easy. Yeah. So I want to play more. I want to work smarter, not harder. That's why I built the online course. I write books, and I want to get it out there in affordable ways to people and have fun doing it.
Well, it seems like you've moved beyond feeling like you're at work.
Oh yeah.
Already, which is I think the key to all of it. If you know, the time tends to fly by in a gratifying way when you enjoy to such a great extent what you're doing. And I know it took me 30 something years to get to the point that I felt that way, but I do now. And it's the same kind of feeling. You take more energy from the impact that you can see in others than any personal monetary gain or otherwise. So
right.
I mean, I sense that joy from you.
It's very authentic. Yes. I have so much fun doing what I love. You know, and when I'm not doing it, I'm doing other things I love, like fly fishing and skiing and, you know, those fun things. Golfing. I just took up golfing. So we're having fun doing that too.
Well, it was all good until you took up golfing.
Talk about a mind game. Oh my gosh.
It's the most aggravating sport or activity ever invented. Sure.
It is. I would agree.
You said you were in Colorado Springs, right?
Yes.
So there's plenty of fun things to do up there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we just got done with 4 days up in Keystone too, in Summit County. Awesome. Keystone, Breckenridge, you know, all those great ski resorts up there. Yeah.
World-class night skiing in Keystone.
For sure. Yes. Have you been?
Yeah, I lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming many years ago for about 5 years when I was in the military, and used to be in that part of Colorado every time I didn't have to work, which was a lot.
Right.
So, yeah, Keystone's great, and Arapahoe Basin, that's all fantastic out there.
It is. It's a good time. It's a big playground. If you're an outdoors person, this is your country. This is playground country for sure. Gold Medal Water is just, 45 minutes away. It's awesome. But I wanted to ask you guys a question.
Mm-hmm. Go right ahead.
So if your personal brand was a make and model of a car, what make and model of that car would it be? Not necessarily what you're driving now, and probably not even what you're driving now, but if it were to be represented in one of those, remember the cartoon Cars, where all of these cars, animated cars, had personalities and stuff way back? If it was represented in a movie like that, what would it be? And list 3 adjectives that describe that car. And then the one of those 3 to 4 adjectives that would nail it for you in terms of describing you.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm gonna let you go first.
Wow.
That's a tough one.
It reminds me of the time I was asked in an interview at the University of Arkansas if I were going to be a tree, what kind of tree would I be? And I was like, wow.
Cars are a little bit more.
They are. Relatable.
More fun. Yeah.
Expansion. Yeah.
Relatable. Yeah, I was thinking of all kinds of tracked and four-wheeled vehicles. So I was thinking probably in a M1 Abrams tank that had been through a lot of skirmishes and battles and had some, bullet holes and had been in firefights and all that, but was still running hard and doing damage and just excited about being in the mix. And so what was the other part of that?
So what are the three adjectives you would use to describe that car?
That vehicle, tough, relentless, and ready for a fight, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, we're ready.
Or ready, yeah.
So of those three, tough, relentless, and ready, which is the most?
Relentless, for sure.
Okay.
Never giving up, never giving up, really, I would say.
Awesome.
Being relentless.
So how do you, Jeff, show up as relentless in your professional world, in your family environment, with your friends, in how you deal with your finances, your spirituality or well-being? So those are the types of things you start infusing, getting aware of, conscious, and infusing into your world.
I guess a part of that in all those is just being undaunted.
Mm-hmm.
and not being fazed a lot by setbacks, because as a serial entrepreneur, and I've been through it 9 times, you have lots of setbacks.
Yeah.
And you just figure out a way to keep grinding it out and grinding through it and figuring it out. So, and it's that way a lot with family too. So I've been married 36 years. I have 4 kids and 4 grandkids, and that means that is my reason for being.
Nice.
Everything else I've ever done associated with that. So you just keep staying with it and figuring it out.
You see how the word relentless, you could have a sentence that describes relentless that in your work bucket, a sentence that describes it in your family bucket, right? Mm-hmm. In your friends bucket. And so then you end up with 6 sentences that is your definition of relentless for Jeff.
Yeah, and what I actually drive is a dirty, relatively new Jeep Gladiator truck, which is as close to a tank as I could probably.
It really is, but on the high end.
Yeah. That's
right.
A good exercise.
So look at your bio and see, where do you have the word undaunted or the word relentless or the word, never give up in your bio?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thought for sure.
I mean, that's how we begin to get conscious and then infuse. And then when you find that you are relentless in a situation, it'll pop up in your brain and you're like, yeah, that's me, that I'm aligned because this is me. This is what I'm doing, right? That's what makes it so satisfying. Anywho.
That's quite an exercise.
It is. Well, there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh,
but
I understand.
Or Caleb, how about you?
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but no, I'm just kidding. I was sitting here thinking about it, and that's tough. But what I came up with would be probably a DeLorean that's retrofit to be an electric vehicle.
Awesome.
It's called a Cybertruck.
Yeah, there we go. Cybertruck.
There you go. So, what are the 3 adjectives?
That one's tougher. So I'd say if we're thinking about like a DeLorean retrofit Cybertruck, probably tough, reverent, because like just reverent to history and culture in regards to, the DeLorean, modernizing that, and then unique or weird.
Now, there's some whimsy in there too.
Yeah,
you're definitely whimsical.
I like weird though too.
That's good.
So where are those words in your bio? Where do you see yourself showing up in those 3? There's so much more to this than just that, but if you can narrow your focus on that and seeing where you're actually authentically showing up with that, and if you're not, where can you start being that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. it's pretty powerful with personal brands. Really, it's like peeling back an onion, and when you get clearer and clearer and clearer, you get permission to step into what you're describing as who you are. And the more you do that in your actions and behaviors, the more you become that. And then you get, when you're aligned, things start coming to you. It just works out. I don't know if you guys ever talk about that on this show, but it happened.
I think that's a first.
Yeah, this is good. I mean, this is good because it informs so many other things that you need to do if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. It's so important to understand where you're coming from, and kind of what comes to mind is, and it's somewhat related. And I've used this when I've given talks before on leadership and just my journey. Troy Aikman, a famous quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, after he won the second Super Bowl ring, he had this moment of reflection where he said, "Is this all there is?" He was obviously one of those high achievers that was goal driven. And he hadn't really enjoyed the journey. It was just, piling up more accolades, more trophies, more achievements. And I think it causes me to reflect on, you better enjoy as part of the way you look at your brand and your journey and your life, that journey, because that's really all there is. The destinations are fleeting. So anyway, I appreciate your thinking on all this. I think it's super useful.
I basically help my clients stopping so much the doing part and start being. And when they be more, especially more authentically, then the doing gets easier. It's amazing.
Well, we're gonna turn the tables on you now, and the way we typically like to land the plane is if you were to be able to go back 5, 10, or 15 years earlier in your career and give your younger self some advice based on what you know now and all that life experience, what would it be?
I think the biggest message would be to trust the process and trust in myself. I mean, I basically, like a lot of solopreneurs that have chosen to do what they're doing, that have chosen, right, want to find something out for themselves in that space, right? So I would say to myself, invent this process earlier and go through it earlier. And surrender to being okay with being you and really just deliver on that every single day. I got sucked into the whole, I got to say it this way. I got to be this clear. I got to promise this. I got to, and I think I learned I took the scenic route. And I learned the long way that I didn't have to do that. Yeah.
That's great. Well, the very last thing that we ask is, where can people find out more? What's the best way for them to find out more about what you're doing, or if they wanted to engage you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, my website is brandascension.com. Tons of stuff on there, including videos, and there's a free Kickstarter toolkit for the personal brand full of some goodies for free. My brand new online course is personalbrandpresence.com. It's fascinating. 5 modules, 14 lessons, takes you through the whole process. I'm with you the whole way. I narrate it. Workbook download, that's so fun. I'm on LinkedIn, social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that. Reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff. I do 15-minute free Zoom brand breakthrough sessions that they can sign up for on my website. So they have to fill out a form. They have to go through my intake. Plus, I ask more questions in the session. But if they're just curious about, knowing that they've got something deep inside that they're unable to tap into, or they can't find the success from the marketing efforts they're doing right now, it's because they're not landing on that authentic alignment. I guarantee it.
Than's so much for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me so much.
Have a fantastic weekend.
I will. I'm going to go play golf.
You'll be aggravated, but enjoy it anyway.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.